Video games are very complex. So that's why I'm going to teach you how to program a video game. What you will need for this project is a computer with at least 8 gigabytes of RAM, a processor that came out in the last 8 years, and if you want, a decent GPU. That will streamline the process of actually making the game. Unity free version is the software that we're going to use. The code that we're going to be using for this project is based in C Sharp. And optional, but I like it. You need a gamer shirt in order to become a true game developer. And you also need a keyboard because you can't really develop without one. And now, to install Unity on your computer. Step 1, Google Unity. You type it into Google, you see Unity, and then you get the download option. Step 2, after you click download, you'll be redirected to this page where it says download for Windows. We shall be downloading on Windows. Step 3, you go through the process. Once you click download, it's going to start downloading an exe file. Once that's done, open it, and you should be met with a license agreement. Click I agree. Then you should be met with where to install it. It doesn't really matter. Yeah. So you install it, and then you complete Unity Hub setup. And then once you press that, you finish, and then you get met with the sign-in page for the Unity Hub. Since we don't have an account, we shall create an account. You get met with welcome to Unity Hub. Then you get redirected to the website, and then you just create an account. You input your email. It's joe375@gmail.com. You input a username, a full name, and a password. The username is typically only for projects where you have to join a team or something like that. It's useful just to have it. Full name, they don't really use your full name most often. And then once you finish creating your account, it should reopen up Unity Hub, and you should be met with the start screen. And now it's time for the fun part. We get to make the project. We create a new project. It goes right here. Plus new project. The editor version is the version of Unity that we're going to be working on. Typically, I recommend the newest one that is out. So the newest one currently is 6000.0.43F1. Just click on that one. There's not really much of a reason to go backwards unless you already are established in Unity and you want to go back to how things used to work. Or if you're working with someone who is on an older version of the project, then that's when you would want to downgrade your project. So organization, you don't really need to worry about that unless you're joining a team. You create your project name. Let's name our project. I'm going to name it Burger. You choose a location that you want to install it on your computer. I'm not going to do that because I don't really need it to be stored anywhere. And then you click create project. Now it's creating. This process can typically take a while. I'm talking like minutes. If it's your first time opening up a project, it can take a while. Yeah. All right. So now that the project is open, we get to see what we can work with. So to get started, this is your console. This is your project. This is your game. This is your inspector. And this is the scene. This is where you manipulate everything that you're going to be working with. All right. So we're going to be adding a object into the scene. You right click on your hierarchy, scroll down, you hit 3D object. You're going to select cube. And then as it loads, there you go. You got a cube. Typically, you can use your middle mouse click to move left to right like this, and then use your right left click to move your camera around like this while working in the scene. So let's look at this little guy. What can he do? All right, so we got a mesh filter. What this basically does, we got a mesh filter and a mesh renderer. The mesh filter basically makes it into the shape that you want the mesh to be. The best way to think of a mesh is like a coloring book. Without coloring anything in, you don't have anything that you can really see. There's no outline, there's nothing, it's just see-through. With a mesh, you are able to see the texture on the cube. So you got this guy, and he's just there. The transform affects things every way. If you're working with position, rotation, or scale, this is the stuff you want to mess with. So you move the position, it moves X and Y, up and down, and Z axis. Rotation works the same way. It rotates that way. Scale is where things start to get a little bit interesting. You can stretch it and always like that. For our video, we're just going to be making a giant horizontal plane. So let's fix this up. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. All right. So we got our project. Let me see here. I'm going to bring it a bit more towards the camera. Wrong value. It's going to be along the Z axis. And we're there. So from the scene, it should look like this. And the camera is right there. So click on it. And then you can see everything basically the camera can see. And the camera has its own inspector, a bunch of stuff, but we're not going to get into that today. So when you are creating an object, it just starts off with a base name cube. Let's name it floor. And then you got your box collider. That's basically what makes it so this object can interact with another object. So let's create our player. All right, so we got our cube, this little guy. Oh, he's pretty far away. Let me just... And there we go. We have our cube. So unique things to work with the mesh renderer is that you can change its color. I'm not going to do that because I do not have time. So you got a box collider. So if you want to test anything on your project, you're going to press play at the very top. And it sometimes takes a bit to load. And nothing happens. And you want to know why? Because we have no physics in our project. So what we're going to do is we're going to add something called a rigid body. This is what gives it the components to be able to interact with everything that is physics-based. So we press play again. And it falls. And that's amazing. So we stop it. All right. Now, good interesting thing to teach you how a box collider works. We unclick this check mark right here by box collider. And we press play again. And now it just falls right through the object. There's no collider to collide with, so it just automatically passes through. Got our cube. I forgot to name this little guy. What shall we name him? Chungus. No, I spelled that wrong. Chungus. Now, after reviewing all that stuff, I think we're ready to code. You're going to want to right click in this little assets tab. You're going to want to go to create. I typically like to create a folder, and I name it scripts, because that's what we're going to be putting our code scripts in. So we go back to create, go all the way down. to. All right. So then once we got that done, we open up scripts. We show create, go all the way down to scripting, and we're going for a mono behavior script since this is dealing with physics-based objects. Click on that, decide the name, fungus movement. So then we double click on that, should be hold on, and then it's opening up Visual Studio. So now that we have created the script for the movement, we have to add it to our actual player. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna click your script, and drag it all the way over here, and then you already added it. And then once that's done, double click on it, and this is where you start preparing your script. Due to time constraints, I'm gonna show you my pre-created script that I just wrote. So the basics of this is you have a float number, which is any point with like decimals. So this is our jump force, it's 10,000, and the F stands for float. Private rigid body equals RB. You don't have to do this, but if you're affecting something like the rigid body a lot, it's better to just create a shorter variable than having to write up this whole thing every single time you want to affect the rigid body. Now, from this comment, this is already pre-created by Unity. It is start is called once before execution. So like right when you start the project by pressing play, it calls this function in which rigid body equals get component. So what it means by get component means it goes all the way back to the project, looks through the player right here. It's like, okay, do I see a rigid body? Do I see a rigid body? Found the rigid body. And it makes it that value is equal to RB. So update. Update is called once every frame on your computer. So let's say your computer can run at 200 frames per second. It's going to get called 200 frames per second. So each time you press something, it's going to call and instantly recognize that that thing has happened. There's also a method called fixed update, which you typically want to use for physics-based projects like this. And all that is it gives a fixed timer instead of relying on the frames per second to detect if something has happened. So the script is very basic. Basically, if input equals get button down jump, Unity has these built-in systems. So you could do like quotation marks horizontal, and you would get the A and D on your computer, or the left and right on your computer as well. You did vertical, you would get the same thing. You would get the up and down, so the equivalent would be WS, and then just up down on the keyboard as well. For this, we're just going to use jump, which is basically just the spacebar. So if we do detect the spacebar, then our rigid body, we add a force to that. It's vector 3 up. So our vector 3, the best way to think about it is it's just basically a three-dimensional shape. So what a vector is, a 2D vector is x and y. A 3D vector is x, y, and z. Z is what makes it three-dimensional and allows you to move how you traditionally move in a video game, not going up. So we times this by 5. Actually, let me change this real quick to our jump force. So our force mode dot impulse, that is what's going to make it so it works. So our force mode, it's more impulsive, so it'll just go like, bah, like that. And whenever you edit your project, you're going to want to do control, save, and that saves everything. And you always have to do that after you make any changes. So when you enter this again, it should be correct. Our number is right. All right. So when you want to test any of your movement code, you press play at the very top. And let's see what happens. So false, and it's disappeared. Yeah. So it didn't disappear. I set the speed to 10,000. And if you look at the Y value, it increased very significantly and very fast. So from the looks of it, it is still climbing. And I don't know when the gravity is going to top out and it's going to come back. So in this instance, we're going to press the stop button and we're going to change the movement speed. So right here, we're going to probably just change it to 10. So about 3 times less than what we were working with. So press play again. And Q falls. And then every single time you press the spacebar, it adds a force in the vertical direction. And this is just your basic jump. However, a lot of stuff can be programmed from this. One thing you could do is have a static movement right here, and you can create Flappy Bird. I've done it before as one of my first projects. It's really fun. Another thing would be just how long you can keep this thing in the air by pressing spacebar. That's another game. Or how fast you can get high in a couple of seconds. So like let's say, oh, and it's still climbing. So my code still has a lot of bugs, and that's all right. Not everything works great the first time. And yeah, oh, there it goes. So that's how you create a video game in Unity.